I feel the peace inside of me.
This is Dr. Laurance Brown with another episode of Interfaith Issues. I concluded last session discussing this book, The Eighth Scroll, a book that I have authored. It can be found on Amazon.com. It can be found on the website, www.eighthscroll.com. And I would like to continue with this episode by doing something which I think is a little bit unusual, but it takes me back to my childhood. You have to remember, I'm 50 years old. When I was raised, we still had radio shows where they read dramas, and they played out a drama to the audience in a reading. And that is what I would like to do to you, or do for you, inflict upon you, some might say, in this episode. I'll begin by reading the back cover of the book to give the audience a flavor. Those who saw the episode before, I described how The Eighth Scroll is an action-adventure novel. It is a novel that throws the audience into two very dynamic controversies. One is the controversy of the Dead Sea Scrolls. The other is the controversy of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. The back cover reads as follows. An ancient scroll has been unearthed. 1900 years after the Essene Jews hid their most precious scrolls in the caves at Qumran, a Catholic priest working on the Dead Sea Scrolls project discovers a text that describes the final edict of the Dead Sea Scrolls, but hides it in fear of the heresy it contains. When prominent archaeologist Frank Tones unearths a reference to the hidden scroll, he wonders if this scroll could be the long-lost gospel of Jesus, or maybe even of James. But before he can act, those who know of the scroll's existence become mysteriously silent or dead, leaving only a father and son team to find the scroll and tell its secrets to the world. In an epic, multi-generational story that spans the globe, they must outwit the Mossad, the CIA, and the Vatican's secret weapon, the Mafia, the Italian Mafia, to bring the truth to light, no matter the cost. Let me begin. Let me give you a reading. I would like everybody in the audience, as I did when I was a child, to sit back and relax, maybe even close your eyes. Listen to the story and get a taste, so that you understand where the story will take you and whether or not you would like to continue it on your own. Prologue. Qumran, on the Dead Sea, 68 CE. Qumran, I must say, is the area where the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered. 68 CE was the time when the keepers of the Dead Sea Scrolls, presumably the Essene Jews, were wiped out. That is the time when the Dead Sea Scrolls were hidden. And this is how the story begins. When death approaches, your life will play before your eyes. The elder who told Jacob this years before now lay crumpled in a bloody heap before him, nestled in ringlets of his own intestines and oozing the stink of disembowelment. Jacob tore his gaze from the twitching corpse, locked eyes with the Roman legionnaire who lifted his weapon from the lifeless body, and froze when the legionnaire raised his gore-streaked sword for the stroke that would sever Jacob's neck. As though with a mind already detached, as though time itself paused to honor him with one last memory, Jacob recalled not his whole life, but only the last hour. He had been hunched over in the bowl of his cave, working frantically to hide the Essene's library of scrolls. One glance out the mouth of the cave at the darkening sky, mirrored in the vast expanse of the Dead Sea below, told him he had run out of time. Why did I ever join the sect of Essene Jews? If they knew my Christian beliefs, they would banish me forever. The instant he conceived the thought, his mind conjured up memories of slashing swords, screams, and bodies tumbling into the dust in pieces. That's why I joined, he said to himself, for protection. For a moment he reflected how, 30 years ago, the Romans had hunted down the disciples of Jesus, the Christ. Now, 2 years into the Jewish rebellion, the Romans hunted down all Jews, excepting his own sect of Essene Jews. But every Essene knew their scant protection could end at any instant, and Jacob couldn't banish from his fears the tales of wild beasts tearing Christians to pieces in the Roman Colosseum, which Emperor Nero had kept lit at night with human candles. Martyrs, he muttered, but found little consolation in the fact. Jacob snatched up the most precious of all the scrolls. The parchment whispered against his fingers as he swiftly rolled it. Despite his reverence for the scripture, his hands shook, and he splattered hot wax as he dripped it from his candle to seal the free edge of the scroll. He forced himself to draw deep breaths of the musty cave air until his hands steadied, and then stamped the puddles of fast-cooling wax with the Roman captain's signet ring. Then he applied a linen wrap and sealed the free edge of the wrap as well. He shoved the scroll into an exquisite limestone jar, but then froze. Gently, he placed the jar on the floor of the cave, grabbed handfuls of his shoulder-length hair close to his scalp with both hands and rocked himself until he felt his nerves still. Calm down, he told himself, just calm down. Slower now, Jacob removed the scroll from the jar, checked it for damage, and gently slid it back into the jar. Then he fitted the lid with a sandy rasp, picked up his sputtering candle, and poured a ribbon of molten wax into the seam. After he sealed the jar closed, but before the wax had a chance to cool, his Essene brothers arrived. Jacob jumped up and wrestled 3 earthenware jars, each half the height of a man and filled with scrolls, to the cave entrance. He stumbled in his haste and nearly dropped 1 jar. The rough pottery slipped in his fingers, but he caught it in time. It bumped the floor of the cave, but didn't break. The brothers heaved the jars into their arms, cast Jacob a worried glance, and then hurried off to hide the jars in distant caves. Jacob returned to the cubit-long limestone jar sized for a single scroll and applied the captain's ring to the cooling wax around the lid. Why had the captain ordered him to hide the scrolls? Jacob had heard the rumors, of course. Roman legionnaires with Jewish sensitivities, or Christian Jewish in everything but name. Romans who tormented the followers of Jesus the Christ by day, and then prayed for forgiveness to the God Jesus had spoken of at night. He had heard such men existed, but had never met one, until the captain of the legionnaires. Jacob buried the limestone jar in the mountain of parchment sheets stacked in the center of the cavern. He said a quick prayer, sweat streaming from beneath his arms as he raised his quivering hands to the heavens, and then bolted from the cave. The barren Judean desert seemed drawn closer to the heavens by the crimson ceiling of sunset, but Jacob had no time to enjoy the view. With practiced speed, He picked his way across the ridge of land that led to the complex, passing groups of legionnaires as they lounged on the terrace, their weapons ever near at hand. He feigned calm when he visited the captain in his quarters, but once he had returned the captain's signet ring, he rushed toward the dining hall's welcoming glow and the voices of his milling brethren, his fears flailing about in his mind. By the doorway and to the right, the captain had instructed. Why? Jacob wondered. Even as he entered the